Today's stories may contain subject matter that some viewers may find disturbing, and as always, viewer discretion is advised. And if you have a story you'd like to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. As a long-distance trucker, it was normal for me to come across cars and trucks that passed me, cut me off, things of that nature. I'm so used to it, and you're pretty much taught to look out for that kind of stuff, so you get an idea of when it's going to happen, and you slow down or get over as needed. Some people are very colorful and feel the need to express exactly what they are doing and how they felt about it, too. I'm a female driver, so I've had people drive next to me or stop at a light that seemed to treat me differently after seeing it was a woman behind the wheel. Different as in they backed off or occasionally got more aggressive, thinking they could threaten me off the road, I guess. I didn't scare easily, though. I do drive a big-ass truck, after all. There was this one guy that actually caused a pretty terrifying situation for me. It was getting dark, and the later at night that it gets, the less traffic there is on the road. This is why I preferred night driving. I was on one of those old 2-lane freeways, just about totally flat with minimal curves. I was also coming back from a drop-off, so I didn't have a trailer attached, which also meant a much lighter load and easier drive. So, to say that I was enjoying this ride was a bit of an understatement. Being this late also meant little to no other cars, too. Until I saw headlights coming up behind me. I take note of this, and I continue as I was. If they want to pass, they can pass. However, some people just don't for whatever reason, and it seemed like that's what this person was doing. The headlights were a little higher, and by the outline, I could tell that it was a truck, like a personal one, not a semi. They stayed behind me for some time, and then I noticed that they got pretty close to the back end of my truck. Again, something I noticed people doing right before they passed me, so when they started falling behind, I slowed down some, giving them the opportunity to do so. That's not what they seemed to want to do. When I slowed down, they got on my tail again and started flashing their lights. I didn't understand why, as they were going the same way as me, so they couldn't be warning me of a speed trap ahead or anything like that. There was seemingly nothing wrong with my truck, as there were no abnormal sounds, feels, or even lights. So I just ignored it and went a little under the speed limit, hoping that they would just pass already. Several awkward minutes later, they were still behind me, gunning it up, nearly hitting me, and then backing off. And with them flashing their lights, I finally decided to give a little hint to back off or go around, by honking and motioning out the window for them to go around. That's when they finally seemed to get the hint, and went in the lane next to me, appearing like they were going to pass. As a force of habit, I looked over at this person as they went by to see this guy with his cab light on, and he looked furious. He kept looking over at me and back at the road, and he was shouting something. Both of our windows were up, so I have no idea what it was. He was very red, though, and you could tell that he was straining himself as he yelled. I had no idea what was wrong with this guy, and all I could think to do was look at him confused, slightly shrugging in a "what the hell is wrong with you" kind of way. Then, he started motioning like he wanted me to pull over, and like hell was I going to do that. I just shook no, and continued driving, slowing down again slightly, so that he would hopefully just move on. I guess that he wasn't interested in that, though, as he slowed back down to get behind me, and this time he actually hit the back of my truck. He hit it hard enough that it made me lurch forward. I knew I needed to find a way to get away from this guy, but there was literally nothing around me. I had passed a sign for gas and a hotel several miles back, but it was still going to be a solid 20 miles or so before I got to the exit. So I had to hope that this guy just wouldn't destroy my truck before I got there. He hit me 2 more times before he tried doing the same thing, pulled up next to me, and demanded that I pulled over. At this point, I was going over the speed limit, hoping that he would just leave me alone, or even hoping that there could be a cop to intervene, but neither happened. So I just tried to match the speed so that when he did ram me, it wouldn't be as damaging, and counted down the mile markers until I got to the exit. I did call it in to our dispatch to let them know, in case something did happen to me, but it's not like there was much that they could do either but call authorities, and maybe they would just catch up to us. Unfortunately, he was relentless and started hitting me in my driver's side. So, I decided to try something stupid. I put my hands up and agreed to get over. There was no way that I was getting out with this psycho, but I needed to get ahead of him. I pulled over, keeping my doors locked and windows open, and, as I expected, he pulled over in front of me. What I didn't expect was for him to be carrying a gun. I know nothing about guns, so all I could tell you is that it looked like it was some kind of handgun, but it had a longer barrel, but not like a shotgun. Either way, I was noping out of that situation, and as he was walking towards my truck, I gunned it as hard as my poor truck could go. He challenged me, thinking that I wouldn't hit him, and he was right. But that didn't stop me from hitting his truck, because instead of parking on the shoulder, he parked across the lane. I got out of there, hearing shots in the distance, until I found the next exit. I got off the highway and called dispatch, and I explained everything to them. They suggested that I find a police station to file a report, since there was damage to the truck. I ended up at a gas station with a McDonald's attached to it, and I sat there, talking with someone about what happened, and where the closest station was. It was a small little town in West Virginia, so they said that they were closed unless there was an emergency, and then the calls to the police station went directly to the sheriff. I knew the guy was long gone, so I agreed to wait until morning, and they agreed to let me pull my truck around the back to try and hide it. The next morning, I went to file the report, and to my surprise, they said this wasn't the first time they've had reports like this. However, it was the first time a semi-driver was the victim. They'd had reports of other people just passing through being rammed and told to pull over, and when they do, the person holds them at gunpoint and robs them. The cop even mentioned that they were probably desperate since they were trying to stop a semi. After that, I left, shuddering at the damage to my truck, and I went the rest of the way home with no issues, thankfully. That's not to say that I wasn't a little paranoid about people getting too close to me, though. As far as I know, the guy was never caught, but I'm not entirely sure. I hope that I at least did some decent damage to the front and side of his truck, though, rendering it useless for a while. Work tried to give me a hard time about the damage and what I should have done instead, but I would do it all again if it meant saving my own life. So, angry guy from West Virginia, I hope that you and I never have a run-in again. As a trucker, you can find yourself sleeping in some pretty weird places. For the most part, I didn't have a problem staying in rundown motels or in my cab on the side of the road. I didn't scare easily, and my doors are always locked, but It's more of the unexplainable situations that don't sit right with me. One time, I was driving on a long stretch of desert highway in a state that I hadn't been to before. I've been doing this long enough, though, that I knew my body and its limits, so not having a rest stop close by, I made the choice to go ahead and pull off near an exit to sleep for the night. I got parked, and I made my way to the cabin and I laid there, ready to get some sleep. I am a pretty heavy sleeper, so it doesn't take long for me to crash. However, even though I felt drained, it seemed to take some time for me to finally fall asleep. Then, it seemed just as soon as I drifted off, I was jolted awake. But I had no idea why. I thought it was one of those dreams when it feels like you're falling, so I just closed my eyes and tried to go back to sleep. But this time, I started hearing strange noises. It started as a weird tapping that sounded like it was coming from the top of the cab. I wanted to dismiss it as something falling on it, like an acorn maybe, or maybe just a tree limb, but there were no trees on the side that I was on, and it was also too much of a pattern, like a subtle tap, tap, tap. This put me on guard, and I immediately started paying more attention to the sounds. As I laid there, I noticed the tapping sound was getting fainter and fainter, like it was going towards the back of the truck. When I could no longer hear the sound, I slowly sat up, and without looking out the windows, I made sure the doors were locked. I then went back to laying down with my eyes closed and just continued listening. There were no other humans around. I would have heard a car pull up or stop. I would have heard someone walking up to my truck, and there was none of that. The sounds all started with the tapping on my roof. I'm part Native American, and I was told many stories of skinwalkers and other similar types about spirits by my grandparents and parents. And I was also told what to do if I ever came across one. So this immediately put me in fight or flight mode, and there was no way that I was stupid enough to try to fight it. I laid there, saying a native prayer that my grandmother had taught me, and continued to listen to find the right time to go. I started hearing what sounded like something running along the side of the trailer, like someone was running their hand across it, and then it got closer to the windows as I heard the tapping on the glass, assuring that I didn't look at it, and I waited for it to leave. While it was tapping, I swear that I could hear a woman's voice softly saying, "Hello?" As I laid there, I heard it go around to the other side of the truck, while the tapping got louder and almost more violent. Then, it stopped. It was completely still. I couldn't even hear the wind. I slowly got up, and, just in case, I made sure to not look out the windows. It was a struggle, but I even crawled over to get into the driver's seat instead of getting out and back into the driver's side door. Then, as I started the truck, there was a loud thud from the top of my truck. It almost sounded like something had fallen on top of it. I tried to take off as fast as I could with the big-ass semi, and I drove down that deserted, seemingly empty road while barely looking out the window, praying that it didn't try to stop me. I was thankful to never see it, and especially not in front of me, but it didn't hesitate to tap on my driver's side window again while I was driving. I remembered my grandfather telling me to never look at it, and never give it the attention, which is also why I've debated submitting this, so I never looked over at it. I continued my prayer again and drove until I saw the sunrise. I don't even remember when it finally went away, but after some time, I came across a little truck stop and pulled over. There were other people around, so all I could hear was the sound of people talking, walking, doors closing, and engines. But I didn't hear or feel anything inhuman. I decided that I was safe to finally get some sleep, and that's exactly what I did. I was impressed with myself for staying awake and keeping my eyes on the road, but I guess that's also part of the fighting to live side of things. I didn't experience anything else on that trip, and thankfully I didn't have to take that road back. I also checked my truck and trailer when I arrived, and there wasn't a scratch or dent on top of it. Skinwalkers are not something that anyone should seek out. You're better off just listening to stories and leaving it there. Because I promise you, nothing good will come of it. This took place back in 1999 when I was 18. I won't sugarcoat it and just say that I didn't have a good childhood, nor am I asking for any pity. It made me who I am today, but that doesn't mean that I've accepted it either. My dad was not in the picture. I knew his name was Scott, and that's about it. Hell, I still hardly know anything about him. I lived with my mom for a while and whatever guy she was with, and when she would disappear for days, I was left with my grandma. My grandma was fine. She was kind enough to me, but her thought was, I raised my kids, I don't want to raise yours too. So, I think there was a bit of animosity there, I guess. The problem was that, somehow, my mom always seemed to pick the winners, as they were more interested in me than her. I'd woken up on multiple occasions to them doing things in my room, being left alone with them, giving them another opportunity. To say it messed me up was an understatement. I knew what they were doing was wrong, but my mom wouldn't believe me. My grandma pretty much just complained about her choice in men to me and to her, and if she mentioned it to my mom, she would just beat me when I got home for spreading dangerous lies. School life wasn't much better. I had a few friends I was semi-close to that I hung out with, but I was never close enough to tell anyone about what was going on at home. I sucked in a lot of my classes because either I struggled to understand things, like a lot of the math and science stuff, or I just wasn't interested in it. I enjoyed the English classes because I loved writing anything from fiction, research papers, poetry, all of it. But my grammar was awful. I didn't connect to any teacher, even though my English teacher tried, but since he was male, I didn't want to get close to him. I feel like at school I just kind of existed. And as I got older, I felt the only way to connect to anyone was to get close to the one person I thought that I knew, my mother. So I tried to be interested in the things that she was interested in. I started getting high and I drank with her. It just numbed me so I didn't notice the things her friends would do to me. Again, I'm not looking for any pity or for anyone to tell me what I should have done, but just giving a quick rundown of why I chose to do what I did after all of this. I didn't want this life. I knew I wanted more, but I didn't know how to get out of this. What I did know was that if I didn't get away from it all, I was going to die. Be it from my own doing or someone else that I didn't know. So, at the age of 17, I ran away. I didn't tell anyone. I took money out of my mom's purse in small amounts so I had something, and on the first day of school, I skipped, and I started to find my own way as far away from Georgia as I could. I walked a lot, and when I couldn't walk, I found a bus stop and rested until I got funny looks and moved on, or occasionally took the bus. And that's what brings me to this story. It was my birthday month, March, so I'd been gone for several months at this point, and I managed to get to Iowa. I hitchhiked a lot, and I even came across some pretty cool people. I lied to some of them, telling them I was 19 or 20 and just trying to explore the world, as they were suspicious of me being a runaway, but others were just accepting and willing to take me somewhere that I asked. I actually found a bar that allowed me to work as a busboy and do the dishes, and they paid me under the table since I didn't have an ID and technically wasn't old enough to work there. I didn't drink or anything, so I know paying me was risky for them, but I didn't abuse it. I slept on people's couches, so all the money I was making was just accumulating in my backpack to help me get to where I needed. When I made enough, I quit, giving them a notice, and I left again, doing what I did the last time. Sometimes I even took rides from truckers. They really got me the furthest and typically the cheapest, because a lot of them just wanted company. I always made sure to tell them that I had money to pay them, and made sure they agreed before I got in. I was very black and white about it. I didn't do any kind of favors for people. So, when I came across another trucker at an old diner, and we started talking as we ate our lunch next to each other. He was heading to Wyoming, so I asked if he was willing to have a passenger, and he agreed. I again told him I was willing to pay for the ride, and we both agreed on $100. I gathered my things, and we both headed off. I didn't have much with me. I did buy a better backpack that held more stuff and typically wore 2 layers of clothing so I could have more clothes. Because of this, I wore baggier clothes on top of tighter clothes, and when I could find a place, I usually kept my hair cut short, like pixie style. It made it a lot easier to manage. I don't think I ever really looked attractive, and I did that for a reason. Anyways, this guy seemed fine. We made some small talk. He told me where he was from and how he became a trucker. I told him what I normally told people, that I was 18 and just trying to figure out life. He understood, and he seemed to respect that, even saying that he wished he would have done the same thing at my age. I appreciated that he didn't try to give me some speech about being too young to know what I was doing. I started getting tired as I hadn't slept much that night, but regardless of the person, I didn't sleep when other people were driving. I still didn't trust people no matter how nice they seemed. This is also why I always kept a pocket knife and pepper spray on my person, never my bag. They were actually one of the first things that I bought. To keep myself awake, I would count or name off things that I saw in my head. The guy must have noticed something was wrong, and he offered me some coffee from a thermos that he had. I didn't take food or handouts from people either, so I declined. I had a bottle of water and some of the energy pills in my bag if needed. After a few hours, he said he was going to make a quick stop to use the restroom, and that way we could stretch and refresh. And I thought it was a good idea. I'm still watching my surroundings and saw the gas station sign with the exit number being a few miles off, so I knew that we were getting close. However, he started slowing down before we even got to the exit ramp. This immediately put me on edge. I looked around and then looked at him, and without skipping a beat, and looking calm and collected, he said he always slowed down before the exit. He said he'd been cut off too many times at the last second on exit ramps, and it also gave people behind him the chance to go around him because he knows his wide, slow turns often annoyed other drivers. It made sense to me at the time, but I was still cautious, and I was right to be. He then came to a complete stop on the shoulder, when the exit was within our vision, less than 100 feet in front of us. Again, I gave him a kind of, what the hell, look. And he said, "If you want me to take you further, you'll have to pay up." I reminded him that he agreed to $100 to let me go with him to Wyoming, and he argued that I would pay the $100 but didn't agree on the distance. I argued with him some more because this is why I was very specific before I ever got into any vehicle. Not liking where this was going, I immediately went for the handle to jump out, and I noticed the door would not open. That's when he jumped towards me, nearly getting on top of me, demanding that I pay him. I distracted him by half-ass fighting him with my left hand and letting him try and finagle his way to my pants zipper while I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my spray. I was able to get him in his left eye, causing him to jump back some. I still couldn't get the door open, so I managed to roll down the window, grab my bag, and jumped out of it. He tried to grab me, and I kicked, landing a solid one into his face, I believe. I screamed as loud as I could, trying to make a scene, and ran over the hill on the exit, hoping that someone would hear it, as the gas station was right off of the exit. Thankfully, someone did. Some lady was getting in a car with a little kid, and she looked up, and even though she seemed hesitant to approach, she did ask me what was wrong. I briefly explained to her and demanded that somebody call the cops. She grabbed my arm and picked up her kid, and she took us both back into the building. I looked out the window and saw that he was still sitting there, probably unable to see. The cops showed up, but not before he did end up leaving. Another thing I always did was checking the plate number, and I grabbed the handlebar above the door to leave my prints on something. So I gave the cops the number and the detail of the truck, like the logos, and they said that they would look into it. They also asked for my info, but I didn't want to be traced, so I told them I didn't have a contact number, which was true, and I requested to be anonymous. I knew there wasn't anything they could do, nor probably would, but I'm not going to keep quiet on that stuff anymore. The lady offered to give me a ride to the next city that they were headed to, and even wanted to buy me a bus ticket. I declined, but I knew when to wave the flag with some people. She gave me a ride for free, helped me figure out the bus routes because it was confusing, paid for it, and even gave me an extra $20. On the ride, she didn't force conversation. She just played some children's music and then waited until I spoke. That was the only time that I cried and told someone everything that happened. She didn't react, she didn't flinch, she just listened. When we got to the bus, she hugged me like I had never been hugged before and told me that she understood why I did what I did, and that I was brave for it. She didn't tell me to go or call home. Nothing like that. I never felt more accepted. I left, got on the bus, and made my way to Nebraska. This didn't stop me from taking rides from people, but I always made sure to stay one step ahead. I also never had a similar experience to that one. Again, call me stupid, call me naive, I don't care. Because in reality, you can say what you would do all day long, but that's not how things work. Until you're actually in the position yourself, until you are in that exact moment with only seconds to react, you don't know what you would do. Regardless of what happened, I got away from the toxic home life, and I now live happily in Montana with my husband. What I did was definitely dangerous, especially for my age, and I would never suggest it to anyone. But I'll also be the first person to hear you out, understand your reasoning, and accept you for your decision. I strive to be like that woman that I met by chance. Just know that not everyone is as they seem on the surface, no matter how much you think you know them or that you're safe. I went with those people because that was the only option that I had, especially in those winter months, but I never trusted them. So, when you're soloing anything, I will be the first to tell you to put yourself first because you can't help anyone else if you can't help yourself. Anyways, there's my experience with a creepy trucker, but I don't let it control me, so to that creepy trucker, I hope that you lost your eyesight, or at least maybe learned a lesson. So this was a collection of some real scary trucker stories. Yeah, definitely some weird stuff. And people who have to do long haul driving or just long driving in general, they get to definitely put up with some of the weirder parts of life. Things that I would never want to put up with. I know I've mentioned it in the past, but I did a long, Patience and I, sorry, did a long road trip way back. That was really fun. But it's not something that I think I could do now. It's just not, I don't know. It's been almost 10 years, but it's just not something I think I could personally do anymore. I don't necessarily like my home state, but I guess whenever it comes to traveling, I just want to have a single destination and not have to go to multiple places away from home. I don't know, I'm weird, so. Hopefully you all enjoyed this collection of stories. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, well, I'm sorry. I have some cookies in the back if you want some. I don't, but, anyway. If you are new to the channel and liked what you heard, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you would be so bold, please leave me a comment. A comment saying anything. Let me know how you're feeling, how you're doing, how your weekend's going. Any plans for next week? I would love to know. I'll just love to chat with you. It's what I do, right? It's what I do. So, lastly, if you do have any questions you would like to send me for my Ask Me Anything video that's coming up at the end of the year, there is a link down below to do so. Please, send me the questions. If you send me a question, you enter yourself in a drawing for a free As the Raven Dreams t-shirt to be determined which style it will be, but I promise you, it'll be good. Plus, it's my merch, right? I can have a bias and say it's amazing. It all looks fantastic. I designed it all, so it's all great stuff. Yeah. Anyways, I hope you're all having a beautiful day, and I hope I do see you on the next video, friends. But until then, sleep well.